There will be occasions where you need to take interlaced sources but output progressive scan footage. For example, if you have a video capture that needs to be played back on the web. You do want to separate the fields in this case because you don't want those comb teeth interlacing artifacts to appear on the web page or wherever your progressive scan output's going. On the other hand, a problem with separating fields is that you're going to have to throw away half the visual information. First, let's get an idea of what After Effects is doing when we separate fields. Here's our familiar motorcyclist, and I'm viewing him in the footage window, which views things after After Effects has had a chance to process it. But I've not separated the fields yet. If I zoom into 200%, you can see the telltale signs of interlacing these comb teeth. Okay, let's separate the fields. Type Command F on Mac or Control F on Windows, and pick Separate Fields Lower Field first. I already know this footage is lower field from the earlier test we've done on it. Click OK. And now we have what looks like a progressive scan image, but it's a bit on the crunchy side, even if I go down to 100%. What After Effects is doing is to separate fields, it has to recreate a whole frame from just half the information, half the lines that make up one field. To do that, it is interpolating in between the lines it has to recreate the missing lines. And that's what creates this crunchiness. Now we're viewing this in what After Effects would call best mode. If we happen to be in draft quality mode, it would look even worse because it would be merely repeating the fields. Okay, now that we know what we're up against, let's tackle how to make it look better. So the goal in this section is how can we extract the best information we can out of the source material that we've been given? Well, there's 3 scenarios, and let's go through them. The best case scenario is if the footage was captured using a process known as 3-2 pull down. Now we do have a separate training module on pull down, and we have touched on it earlier in this training, but I want to give you a thumbnail here so you understand why it's so handy. Some video material actually originates on film or with a camera that's shooting at a slower frame rate, typically 24 frames a second compared to the almost 30 frames a second of NTSC video. Well, to resolve this difference in frame rates, 24 versus 30, there's this process called 3-2 pull down. We now have 4 frames of film for every 5 frames of video information. Now let's open up a clip that has pull down to get an idea what this looks like. I'll Alt or Option double click on it. And again, as I step through the frames, hitting page down in After Effects, there's some frames that look whole and some that look split. I see some interlacing lines in them. That's the telltale sign that there's 3-2 pull down on a clip. Some frames are interlaced while others are not. So if we just treated this footage normally and separated its fields, I know this footage is lower field first. Let's bring the footage window forward, start stepping through the footage. As I step through it, I'm going to see some repeated images. 1, 2, 3. There were 3 fields that were all the same. Hit page down again, different image, repeated second time. Repeated only twice there. Only 2 fields were the same. So here's a new image, page down, 3 fields were the same. And that is the 3-2 pull down that we're talking about. Now we can go one step further with footage like this. Let's go ahead and do Command or Control F, open the Interpret Footage window again, and there is actually a separate section called Remove Pull Down. Now all these different letters refer to the phases of pull down, and I'll discuss that more in the other training module. But most of the time in After Effects, you can just click Guess 3-2 Pull Down. It will guess the field order and also remove the pull down sequence, the whole and split frames. Look at this line here, it's very important. Effective frame rate, 23.976 frames a second, very close to 24. This is the rate that the footage was originally shot at. And what After Effects is doing for us is returning us back to those original whole progressive frames that were shot on film or by a special video camera, so we won't see interlacing anymore. Just click OK. Bring our footage window back forward and see how clean that image is. We don't see any of the artifacts of having removed fields. As I hit page down, we're getting a unique, clean image for every single frame after we've removed pull down. So that's a very important point. If you've got footage with pull down, remove it, you're back to clean, whole, progressive frames. And since your output's progressive, you can just use this footage directly, output at a slower rate, nothing else required. It's already good, clean footage to work with. The second scenario is if we're going to be creating a smaller video from our source, say video destined for an iPod or a website, and it's going to be, say half size or even smaller than the original video. In this case, we can get by with separating fields and not doing much else, to be honest. So go ahead and select your footage, Command or Control F for interpret footage, separate the fields following the correct field order, and whenever you're going to a progressive scan output, I would click the Preserve Edges option in here as well, and click OK. Now let's go ahead and set up our composition at this small size. Command or Control N for New Comp. Go ahead and pick the web video preset in After Effects. It picks a slow frame rate of 15 frames a second, but just for the sake of argument, I'm going to start out by picking 29.97, which is the original video frame rate. Click OK. Drag our footage into that brand new comp, and scale it down. S reveal scale, let's go down to 50%. Now 50% does give me just a slight bit of overhang coming from 720 by 46 video down into a 320 by 240 frame. But that's okay because actually the TV bezel cuts off the edges of your video anyway, so cutting a little bit off for the web doesn't hurt. Notice that this image still looks plenty sharp, it's just smaller. Well, that's fine. Since we're going down to half size, we're not using one of the fields of information anyway, so life is good. You can go ahead and render at the current video frame rate, or go ahead and go to, say, half the video frame rate. I'm a stickler for accuracy, so I'll go to exactly half of 29.97, which is 14.985. Flash video can handle these rates as long as you go for a streaming download or a progressive download. Just don't embed it in a SWIFT file because SWIFT won't allow these funky frame rates. Click OK, and you're ready to go. The third scenario is if you're trying to create progressive video that's the same size or larger than your original source. Say you're creating large video for the web, or maybe you just like the look of progressive scan video over interlaced video. Say you're trying to create print materials from a video capture, that's a common task. What you need to do is de-interlace the footage and get the best possible frame out of the result. There's several recipes and plugins floating around out there to do this. I'll show you some of my favorites. If you have a later version of After Effects, it has a tool built in that can help improve the way fields are separated. Here's our familiar motorcyclist. I've already separated the fields, and you can see the crunchiness in his helmet and on this logo on his back. Now I am zoomed in 200%, but even at 100%, you can see things just don't look as sharp as they could. I'm going to take a snapshot of this image for comparison. I can click on the icon or type Shift plus F5, and now I can use that image for later reference. I'll type Command F on Mac, Control F on Windows, and open the Interpret Footage dialog. And if you have After Effects 7 or later, you have this new option called Preserve Edges. Click it on, click OK, and now let's look at our image. And I'll go ahead and zoom back into 200%. You can see that the lines around the shirt and around the helmet have cleaned up considerably. And I'm going to press F5 to compare my earlier snapshot. This is without Preserve Edges, this is with Preserve Edges, without, and with. You can see it does really help clean up edges a bit. So that's a great first step. Now beyond Preserve Edges in After Effects, there's a pair of third-party plugin sets which do an even better job of creating the best possible progressive frame from an interlaced source. Both of them have an interesting quirk. You do not want to separate the fields in After Effects. So if you open the Interpret Footage dialog for a file, leave Separate Fields off when using these third-party plugins. Okay, I've already got this particular file into a composition, and you can see some of my fields. Now this type of footage is very interesting. You'll notice that you've got interlaced fields on the fish who are in constant motion. But some of these other parts of the image don't show interlacing lines. They're either not moving or moving very slowly. If you've got images like that, great plugin set is called Fields Kit from Revision Effects. Let's go ahead and apply that. Effect, Revision Effects, Fields Kit, Deinterlacer. In Deinterlacer, you separate the field order. It defaults to upper. A lot of my sources are lower field first. Then it has two different ways to decide how to fill in the missing pixels when it has to remove one of the fields. The fill method looks at pixels inside the current frame. It looks for the best neighbors to go ahead and fill in the missing gaps. This is even better than the Preserve Edges technique inside After Effects. The Detect Motion part of this plugin goes ahead and looks at adjacent frames, not just adjacent pixels. If it sees that some pixels are not moving from frame to frame, it knows it can borrow those from adjacent frames and fill in a better, higher quality interpolated image. Two other things this plugin has that I really like is a built-in smoother to help smooth out some of the ridges vertically. You can see how this little fish here is really smoothed out from me just increasing that. And then sharpen if your overall image has gotten too fuzzy or soft because you've been doing this. Now, Fields Kit does come with very extensive documentation. I do suggest that you read it. I'm not going to go into it all here. But if you're creating full-frame video, progressive footage from interlaced footage, this is your best solution. Now, what if you're trying to create print or really large-scale images? from captured video. Well, there's another plugin set that's really good at that. Let's go ahead and delete Fields Kit Deinterlace and apply Effect, Digital Anarchy Resizer. Resizer is my favorite plugin whenever I need to scale up footage. Resizer features a few different algorithms to go ahead and scale up your footage, which look much better than just using scale in After Effects. Indeed, you don't want to go over about 120% scale in After Effects because it looks pretty bad. I use Resizer whenever I need to do that. Resizer also has the ability to separate the fields and do some deinterlacing and motion detection. Kind of like Fields Kit, not as flexible but still very, very useful. So whenever I need to go to a large frame, Resizer is the answer, and now it also has the ability to do some better field separation while it's at it. Now I know some people resist buying third-party plugins. They give you new tools, but they do cost a bit more money. So here's a popular trick that you can use inside After Effects to improve the look of your footage where you've had to separate the fields to create a progressive scan look. I've got a familiar motorcyclist, but I've imported him twice into my project. I'm going to take the first copy, type Command or Control F, and separate the fields like I'm supposed to. Lower field first. I'll make a note here so I can keep track of it. I'm going to take the second copy and separate the fields the other direction. Upper field first. And again, I'll make a note. Upper. I now have two copies of my footage, one that shows me just my lower fields and interpolates the missing fields, and one that shows me just my upper fields and interpolates the missing fields. I will add both copies into a composition. I'll select the copy on top, hit T for opacity, and reduce its blend down to 50%. So now I have a 50-50 blend of the upper field and of the lower field, but both being displayed at the same point in time. Now you do see some ghosting going on here, but you don't see the interlaced teeth that you would normally find if you had not separated fields, or necessarily the lower resolution if you had separated fields. And again, I could go ahead and preserve edges on these items just to increase the quality just a little bit more. There we go. This trick is used quite a bit for people who are trying to go from interlaced to progressive scan without the benefit of third-party plugins, so it's something else you might want to try.